Everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we've talked about San Francisco housing before, and it looks like it's just getting worse and worse as we predicted because, you know, when the market just keeps going up and up and up in value, and we see the bubble expanding, and more manipulations pumped into it to keep it sustained a bit longer artificially, we will reap the consequences. And as this Business Insider article says, San Francisco housing is so expensive that middle-class workers are moving into dorms with shared bathrooms. And as the article kind of goes into further, Starcity is a colliving startup that offers housing to middle-class earners who make less than $90,000 a year. Members pay between $1,400 and $2,400 a month for a fully furnished bedroom and shared bathrooms. That's a ridiculous amount of money for such a small amount of product. I mean, what's going on, John?
Well, it's house inflation, price inflation that is created in San Francisco by everything being so expensive. So there's massive inflation in San Francisco. Surprise, surprise. If people don't understand why it's so expensive, it's massive inflation, both in the real estate because everybody is flooded into the real estate. So that's one of the big things here. Real estate, of course, with the central bank manipulation has, shot prices through the roof again. And we're seeing a lot of major cities in California starting to really struggle when it comes to house affordability because people usually have stagnant wages. So stagnant wages versus rising house prices, that's severely gonna constrain and kill people's affordability. And then, of course, taxes that are increasing, and then they got to go and get into debt in order to, support themselves.
Especially in California, too. I mean, the amount of taxation in California is absolutely absurd, and it's absolute theft. And then, of course, the debt, as you mentioned, if they're shoved down a bottomless pit of debt, you are forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, which puts you in perfect servitude. And, servitude is something that the government, especially in California, really, really likes.
Of course they do. Now, of course, it's caused by high taxes. So high taxes always implements that a lot of people get into debt. And you see that we've done it so many times before where we showed you the stats from the high tax countries and the most indebted countries are usually the same. Also, another important thing here that I want to, talk about how bad it's becoming is an article from Curbed, which says high housing costs and long commutes drive more workers to sleep in cars. That is insane. So that's another thing because of the affordability, because that it's not getting built around, the big commercial centers where people work. There's a lot of things on top of the high inflation that is created by Fed's policies and so on.
And that's in Santa Barbara, so that's not that far off either. And I mean, the fact is there's so much craziness happening in California, Los Angeles, you name it. I mean, it's California, it's super centralized. And I have a lot of good friends in California, great amazing people that are liberty-minded, freedom-minded individuals that aren't part of this collectivist insanity that is going on and ramping up all the time in California. But nonetheless, I mean, when the banking system gets so heavily involved in this level of centralization and the government on top of that pushes people down by regulating small businesses out of competition, out of their ability to compete in the market, stifling innovation, and therefore propping up massive corporations under the guise of stopping those massive corporations, we will see this go on and perpetuate forever. And this is something that we've been talking about for so long, is that, they keep pumping up these housing bubbles in these localized areas to the point of no return. And we're seeing that in parts of Canada, we're seeing that in the UK, we're seeing that in Australia, we're seeing that where are we not seeing that? We're seeing that in Iceland, we're seeing that in Norway. So it just continues to ramp up. John, what do you think is going to be the result of all this insanity in California and most notably in San Francisco?
Well, we're going to see bankruptcies, Josh. That's what we're going to see all across the board again. It's another housing bubble that is being created here. And of course, in California, a lot of major cities are in huge bubble territory right now. And again, it's all debt, it's all created by debt that was very cheap, created by, the central banks. It always comes back to the central banks. They distort markets massively by their Ponzi scheme that they run. And then they lower interest rates, which they shouldn't touch at all. It should be the market that would, at least be able to set an interest rate.
And then on top of that, we see credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, mortgage-backed securities, the return of these things pushed by places like Wells Fargo. I mean, mean, it's just they're repeating history over and over again, things that we've seen far too many times before.
Yeah, and you have, of course, the major corporations now are pushing up their share prices, like Facebook, like Twitter, like Google. All these have, headquarters in California, which is, another thing too. They've been, playing the system by getting into debt and then pushing up their stock price by buying their own stock.
And they're getting billions of dollars from the government, so that doesn't help.
No, exactly. And you see like how the government and the banking system creates all these crises around the world, all this affordability. Think about how bad it's become when under $90,000, as a salary, they can't afford, actually an apartment of their own. This is insane. It's gotten to a point that you got to look back, in the 70s where people actually were able to have one person working. Like even my wife, her dad used to work all by himself and afford to have his wife and the 3 kids, be able to feed them every day and living, comfortably. That is not the case anymore.
Well, it's because small businesses have been crunched under the heavy foot of government, and we're seeing just all these really low wage jobs rising up, and people don't have as much talent as they used to collectively or generally as they used to, being able to build things, create things, and innovation is pushed out of the market, so people don't have ambition. They don't strive for the success that they once did, and instead you're seeing a whole lot of McDonald's jobs and a whole lot of Tim Hortons jobs or Starbucks jobs or etc. And this is a huge problem because it used to be that men were going out and working and women were raising the kids, and I will put in there that raising kids is probably one of the hardest jobs out there, so I'm not bashing any women here. You should see some of the comments we get sometimes. Anyway, but with that said, there was a lot less money necessary just in comparison with inflation as well when it came to affording a house, putting food on your table. Today, it's become so automated. We have so many robots doing jobs because government pushes the workforce out with heavy regulations, upping the minimum wage to ridiculous levels, which we've gone into before, and etc.
Yeah. Well, the inflation has destroyed society, and that's what you've seen since 1970s. You have, obesity, diseases, all these things have increased together with the population and everything increased since 1970s. And it's just to have created this destruction of society. When you corrupt money, you corrupt society, and that's the bottom line. It's so simple to say, but just look at the ramification that we're seeing right now, especially here in California with the affordability of housing.
Yeah, absolutely. So just finishing this off, just be very careful, be very wary. Don't follow HGTV or some kind of home network on TV and say, oh, well, those people are fixing up houses. I'm just not going to learn anything about the market, get in and possibly lose all my money, gamble hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on this insanity because some guy on TV tore down a wall and it looked really nice after they clipped to the next scene, which was probably about, a couple weeks later. Anyway, it's just, there's so much ignorance with people getting into a market they know nothing about, and it's really important that people stay out of debt, look towards self-sustainability, financial responsibility, diversification of wealth. Your house is not an asset, only when I think you sell it, as Robert Kiyosaki mentioned many times to us as well. And then also just work on being able to sustain your own life and your family by, looking towards gold, silver, cryptocurrencies. This is just our opinion, not advice. Cash flow, and at the same time looking at capital gains, and just look to diversify in any way you can, because in the end you want to insure your wealth and you want to make sure that you will survive the next fiat crash, the next market crash, because it's inevitable. You can't put a date on it, but it's going to happen. Fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation, but we've seen this before. And with the fiat system going back to 1024 AD in China, how many times does this have to happen for us to learn? Thousands, apparently. So it's almost been 1,000 years, and thousands of times we've gone through this, and it's about time that we, start to learn a bit about things, do our own due diligence, and be responsible, because after all, responsibility is the hallmark of freedom itself. Thanks for going into this with us, John. There's always so much to go into, and we will continue in another video. We got lots going up on this subject in the near future. So until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here, OM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And don't forget to find us at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to find us there, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
Wow.